Capricorn. There are messages in this world that don't come through words. They come in the way the air stills when night falls. In the pause before you cry. In the moments when you feel something or someone watching over you, and you can't explain why. And tonight, one of those messages has finally reached you. It's not from this world. It's not from memory. It's from a place far beyond what we can see. A place where love never dies even if the person who carried it is long gone. Capricorn, this is your father's final message. Not the one he said with his lips, but the one he carved into time with his sacrifices, his silence, and his unseen prayers. Maybe he's no longer here. Or maybe he was never truly there in the way you needed him to be. Maybe you waited years for words he never said. Maybe you've carried questions he never answered. Maybe part of your heart still wonders, did he love me the way I needed? Was I ever enough? Why did he never say it? But here's the truth that heaven is whispering tonight. He never stopped loving you. He just didn't know how to show it. This message is not wrapped in sentiment. It's wrapped in scars. It's wrapped in late nights he didn't sleep. In bills he paid with a heavy heart. In the way he stayed silent, not because he didn't care, but because he was too afraid to break in front of you. He loved you through action, through protection, through absence, through mistakes. And now that the world has grown quieter, now that your soul is finally ready, his message has found its way to you. Capricorn, the blessing he couldn't say while he was alive is arriving now. In this moment. In these words. From a place beyond time. So before we begin, before we open the sacred pages of what your father never said but always felt, type in the comments below, I receive my father's message. Let the heavens see it. Let the silence be broken. Let your heart be ready, because what's coming next will change the way you see everything he left behind. Part 1. The voice you never heard. Capricorn, what if I told you? The voice you've been waiting your whole life to hear was never truly silent. What if I told you that your father, whether present or absent, gentle or distant, was speaking to you all along, just not in the language you were taught to understand? He didn't always say it out loud. He didn't always say it at all. But his voice wasn't missing. It was hidden. Woven into the rhythm of his footsteps when he came home late. Buried in the sigh he let out when he thought no one was listening. Tucked behind every I'm fine, when the weight of the world was on his shoulders and he carried it anyway. Capricorn, you know what silence sounds like. You grew up inside it. You sat at the dinner table with it. You went to sleep wondering if that silence meant I don't care, or something much deeper. And now, through this message, it's being revealed. Your father wasn't quiet because he didn't love you. He was quiet because the world never taught him how to speak love out loud. He was a man raised in storms, shaped by struggle, conditioned to survive, not to open his heart. The world told him to be strong, not soft. To provide, not explain. To show up, but never cry. And yet, you, Capricorn, needed his voice. You needed to hear that he saw you. That he was proud of you. That even if you fell, he would still stand beside you. You needed the sound of reassurance. Not just the roof over your head. Not just the light left on in the hallway. Not just the food on the table. You needed him. But here's what you never knew. He saw everything. He noticed every small victory. He watched you grow with a kind of awe he couldn't describe. Even when his eyes looked tired. Even when his words were few. Even when you thought he was too busy, too far, too closed off. He was watching, quietly praying that life would be kinder to you than it was to him. Capricorn, his silence wasn't absence. It was his attempt at being strong for you, even when he didn't know how. And maybe now, looking back, you realize that he was building a kind of love not in poems or promises, but in presence, in persistence, in protection. He was trying to be the wall between you and the storm. And walls don't speak, they hold. But here's the truth. The wall he tried to be also became a barrier between his heart and yours. And he knew that. Even if he never admitted it. There were nights he wondered if you misunderstood his silence. If you mistook his discipline for distance. If you thought his silence meant you didn't matter, but in his heart, you were everything. The reason he kept going. The one person he wanted to protect more than himself. You didn't hear it then. But if you listen now, really listen, you'll realize that the voice you never heard was always whispering beneath the noise of life. It whispered every time he left early and came home late. It whispered every time he paid the bills but stayed up wondering if it was enough. It whispered every time he swallowed his pride because your future mattered more than his pain. And tonight, through the wind between these words, he finally says what he never could. I saw you. I loved you. I was always with you. Even in my silence, you were never alone. So hear this, Capricorn. That voice you longed for wasn't lost. It was simply waiting for the moment you were ready to receive it. And tonight, you are. Life lesson, the voice you long for may already be speaking. Capricorn, the greatest tragedy is not when love is absent, it's when we fail to recognize it in the forms we never learned to understand. Tonight, your life invites you to learn a new language. The language of action. The language of quiet effort. The language of invisible loyalty. If you've spent years chasing words that never came, stop and ask, what has love been trying to say in other ways? Not every I love you comes through speech. Sometimes it comes through sacrifice, through showing up, through staying even in silence. Your task now is to become fluent in that forgotten language, not just so you can heal from the past, but so you can give others the kind of love that transcends words. Because true Capricorn power isn't just in building legacies, it's in decoding love where the world sees only silence. Part 2. The silence that wasn't empty. Capricorn. There are kinds of silence that scream. And the one you grew up with. The one that filled the air when your father entered the room. The one that sat beside you during long car rides. The one that hung heavy after small moments where you just wished he'd say something, anything. Was not empty. It was overflowing. With unsaid fears. With swallowed words. With love that didn't know how to rise to the surface without breaking something inside him. Capricorn, you were raised in that quiet, and maybe you didn't even realize how loud it was. Because when silence lasts long enough, it becomes your normal. But silence, for men like your father, was never just about the absence of sound. It was about survival. He lived in a time, maybe in a culture, maybe in a mind, where vulnerability was seen as weakness. Where emotions were dangerous. Where saying I'm proud of you or I need help could shatter the armor he worked so hard to build. So instead, he worked. He provided. He stayed. And you, being the strong Capricorn you are, you interpreted his silence as a message. But sometimes, you heard the wrong one. You thought, maybe I'm not doing enough. Maybe I need to earn more of his love. Maybe he's disappointed in me. But none of those things were true. His silence wasn't your failure, it was his fear. His lack of words was not your lack of worth, it was the cost of how he was raised. And here's the most profound truth of all. He didn't need to speak for you to feel the gap. And you didn't need to hear I love you to still long for it every day. There were moments when he wanted to say something, Capricorn, to reach out, to soften, to let down the shield. But by the time he realized the words were necessary, he didn't know how to form them anymore. So instead, he stayed silent and hoped his presence would be enough. Maybe now, you look back and understand. That silence wasn't rejection. It was a man drowning in expectations, fighting battles no one saw, and hoping that his stillness wouldn't drive you away. And yet, it did. Not completely. Not forever. But part of your heart did retreat. Part of you learned to armor up too. Because when you grow up inside silence, you start believing you have to become it to be loved. But you don't, Capricorn. You don't have to carry his quiet anymore. You don't have to keep mistaking distance for dignity. You don't have to stay strong in the same way he did, by hiding everything that hurts. His silence wasn't empty. It was just misunderstood. And now that you're hearing the message behind it, you don't have to continue the cycle. Life lesson, not all silence is rejection. Capricorn, One of your deepest fears is being unseen, and one of your greatest defenses is becoming unseeable. But here's the truth that can free you. Silence is not always the absence of love. Sometimes it is the very proof that love was too big to be spoken. Yet love, no matter how pure, must still be understood to be healing. So the lesson is this. Learn to ask for the words you need. Learn to offer the words others are afraid to say. Because emotional legacy doesn't only pass through actions, it passes through patterns. And the most sacred act of healing is when one generation breaks the silence, so the next one can speak freely. Tonight, you have the power to break that cycle. To name what was never said. To say what your father couldn't, not for him, but for you. Because the silence you inherited ends with you. Part 3. The Invisible Protection. Capricorn. There's something you've always felt but never fully named. A strange sense that someone was watching over you. That during your lowest moments, something unseen held you together. That when the world turned cold, a force invisible, but real wrapped around you just enough to help you stand back up. That was him. No, not in body. Not in the way you maybe hoped for, but in protection. He didn't always show up with words. He didn't always step in with hugs or advice. But he showed up in ways you never saw. He was the energy between you and destruction. The barrier between you and the pain he hoped you'd never feel. The quiet presence that took the hit so you could keep moving forward. You see, Capricorn, protection doesn't always look like a shield held high. Sometimes it looks like exhaustion after a long day's work. Like missed meals. Like late nights staring at the ceiling, worrying about how to give you more than what he had. It looks like him taking all the weight so you could grow without breaking. He fought his battles in silence. Not because he didn't want to share them with you, but because he didn't want you to carry them. That's what men like him do. They wear the armor, even when it's rusted. They keep standing, even when no one applauds. They swallow the fear, even when it's burning holes through their chest. He protected you not just from the world, but from his own brokenness. He didn't want his wounds to touch you. He didn't want his failures to shape you. He didn't want you to grow up afraid of the same things he feared. So he tried, maybe not perfectly, but powerfully, to become the line between you and everything that tried to dim your light. And when he couldn't stand strong anymore, he prayed that something greater than him would. Capricorn, his protection didn't end when he left. It didn't dissolve when his presence disappeared. Because love that deep continues. It moves through realms. It survives the grave. It shows up in the right moment in this message, in this hour, just to remind you. You were never without a guardian. Even in my absence, I was still fighting for you. So if you've ever wondered why some things didn't destroy you, why some storms missed you, why certain darkness never took root in you, it wasn't luck. It was legacy. It was love disguised as spiritual armor. Graduation cap life lesson: not all shields are meant to be seen. Capricorn, protection doesn't always come with a sound. Sometimes it comes in sacrifices you'll never see. Sometimes it arrives as absence, not because someone left, but because they stood quietly between you and what could have broken you. We live in a world that only honors what's visible. But you, Capricorn, are being called to a deeper wisdom. The greatest love is often silent. The strongest protector may never say they're protecting you, but they do. In secret. In silence. In soul. So here's your invitation. Start recognizing what you've been shielded from, not just what you lacked. Start honoring the unseen hands that held your destiny together. And in your own life, become that silent force for someone else. You were guarded, Capricorn. Not by luck, but by love, the kind that never had to be seen to be real. And now that you know that, you can walk taller, not because you're alone, but because you never were. Part 4. The legacy he carried for you. Capricorn. There's a truth that may be difficult to face. Your father didn't just live his life, he carried yours inside of it. Long before you were born, he had dreams. Some wild. Some impossible. Some quietly realistic. But once you arrived, many of those dreams were folded, stored away, or sacrificed altogether. Not out of regret, but out of purpose. Because something shifted in him. Suddenly, life wasn't just about surviving anymore, it was about making sure you had a chance to thrive. Capricorn, the life he lived may have looked ordinary on the outside. But inside, it was a fortress built of silent promises. Promises like, you will never have to fight the same battles I did. You will never feel the hunger I felt. You will rise higher than I ever did, even if I never get to see it. And so, he traded his personal ambitions for your future. Maybe you never realized it. Maybe you assumed he was just being realistic, responsible, or too tired to chase his own path. But the truth is, he was laying a foundation, brick by brick, with the very things he let go of. Every job he stayed in longer than he wanted. Every dream he didn't pursue because it would take him too far from you. Every opportunity he passed up because he couldn't afford the risk, was part of a silent blueprint. A plan to build something better through you. Capricorn, you are not only your own person. You are part of a legacy, a generational vow whispered through blood, bone, and sacrifice. And it may be hard to carry that sometimes. It may feel heavy. It may even make you wonder if you're living for yourself or for someone else's unfinished dreams. But here's what your father wants you to know tonight. You were never a burden. You were the reason he kept going. You were the chapter he was most proud of, even if he never said it aloud. His life was not perfect. He made mistakes. He fell short in ways that hurt you. He may have never healed his own wounds. But he never stopped believing in you. Even when he was quiet. Even when he seemed cold. Even when you didn't feel it, he carried your name like it was his life's mission. Because in his eyes, you were the fulfillment of everything he never got to become. Capricorn, this isn't a call to feel guilty. This is a moment to understand the depth of what was passed down to you. You don't have to carry all of it forever. But you do get to honor the parts that were given in love. Not everything he gave you was a wound. Some of it was legacy disguised as labor. Graduation cap life lesson, your life was always bigger than you. Capricorn, you were never just born into a family, you were born into a story. A story that started before you arrived. And one that continues every day through the choices you make. Your father may not have left you wealth, poetry, or guidance in words. But he left you something far more enduring. The weight of purpose. The blueprint of sacrifice. The chance to build something better with the pieces he could never fit together. So here is your life lesson. Live in a way that honors the hands that laid your path without letting their limitations become your ceiling. Break the cycles. Elevate the story. Forgive what hurt you, but keep what built you. Because true Capricorn greatness doesn't come from escaping your past. It comes from transforming it into something only you could ever build. Part 5. The quiet sacrifices. Capricorn, there's a kind of sacrifice that never makes headlines. No applause. No recognition. No thank you speeches. But it's the kind that builds entire lives in silence. Your father made those kinds of sacrifices. Not the dramatic kind that gets carved into history books. But the kind that quietly changes the future, yours. He sacrificed in the mornings he woke up before the sun, not because he loved the grind, but because someone had to pay the price for stability. He sacrificed in the shoes that were older than they should have been. In the vacations never taken. In the unspoken dreams he slowly let go of as your needs became his priority. Capricorn, it's easy to miss those moments. Because when love is silent, we assume it's absent. But the truth is, his love was everywhere. It just wore different clothes. It looked like gas in your car, even when his was near empty. Late night repairs on things you never even noticed were broken. Extra shifts taken without ever telling you why. The way he said I'm fine, when everything in him wasn't. He didn't tell you these were sacrifices. Because that's the thing about real providers, they don't announce their service. They just do it. Again. And again. And again. Maybe you grew up thinking he didn't care much about his own happiness. Maybe you wondered why he never smiled more. Maybe you thought he just gave up on life. But what he gave up on wasn't life. It was his right to put himself first. He surrendered the spotlight. so you could grow under it. And here's the most powerful truth of all. He never expected you to notice. He only hoped you'd be free enough to never have to do the same. Capricorn, you may carry ambition now. You may chase success harder than anyone else you know. But part of that drive, that relentless push forward, was born from watching someone sacrifice everything without complaint. He showed you what it means to show up. Even when you're tired. Even when no one sees. Even when nothing about it feels fair. But tonight, you need to hear this. You're allowed to break that mold. You're allowed to succeed without burning out. You're allowed to build without bleeding. Because he didn't sacrifice everything for you to inherit the same pain. He wanted you to build a different kind of life. One that feels like freedom. Graduation cap life lesson, quiet sacrifices shape loud destinies. Capricorn, you are the product of choices made behind closed doors. Of sacrifices whispered, not shouted. Of effort no one ever clapped for, but that carried you to where you are now. So here is your life lesson. Honor the invisible labor. But don't repeat it blindly. You don't have to prove your worth through suffering. You don't have to be exhausted to feel valuable. You don't have to trade your joy for responsibility. The best way to honor those who gave everything is to live fully, not fearfully. To rise because they stayed low. To breathe deeply because they held their breath. Your father's sacrifices were seeds. You are the harvest. Grow beautifully, boldly, and freely. Because he didn't plant those seeds so you could survive. He planted them so you could truly live. Part 6. The words he couldn't say. Capricorn. There are some words that live inside a person for a lifetime. Burning quietly, never spoken, never released. And your father. He carried more of those than you ever knew. He wasn't silent because he had nothing to say. He was silent because he had too much and nowhere safe to put it. How do you say I love you when no one ever said it to you? How do you express vulnerability when your own father taught you that men aren't supposed to feel? How do you say I'm proud of you when you were taught to measure worth by what a person produces, not who they are? So he swallowed those words. Day after day. Year after year. Until silence became a kind of language he forgot how to escape. Capricorn, maybe you don't realize this yet. But you became a mirror for him. Every time you succeeded, he felt it. But didn't know how to say I'm proud. Every time you struggled, he noticed. But didn't know how to say I'm here. Every time you changed, grew, evolved, he watched. But the words got stuck somewhere between his chest and his throat. He meant to say more. But by the time he knew how, life had already grown too quiet. You see, some people wait for the perfect moment to speak their heart. But sometimes that moment never comes. And when it finally does, they're no longer the same person. Or worse, they're no longer here. That was his greatest heartbreak. Not that he didn't love you, but that you might have gone your whole life without hearing it. So this message comes not as a replacement for those lost words, but as a resurrection of them. Right here, right now, he says, I'm sorry I didn't say it when I should have. I'm sorry I let fear speak louder than love. I'm sorry for the moments you needed my words and I gave you silence. Capricorn, maybe this is the first time you've allowed yourself to even imagine hearing those words. Maybe it's uncomfortable. Maybe it brings up tears you didn't realize were waiting just behind your eyes. But don't turn away. Let it land. Let it heal. Let it rewrite the story you've been telling yourself. The one that said his silence meant you weren't worthy. Because it's not true. It never was. He saw you. He loved you. He just didn't know how to speak a language no one ever taught him. But now, you can. Graduation cap life lesson, you don't have to inherit silence. Capricorn, emotional language is not something all families pass down. But you get to learn it. You get to break the cycle. You get to say what he couldn't. To your children. To your loved ones. To yourself. You are not trapped in the same emotional cage he lived in. And the words that he couldn't say, you get to say them now. Say them to those who need to hear them. Say them to your past self. Say them even if your voice trembles. Because the greatest act of healing is not just understanding someone else's silence, It's choosing to speak where they couldn't. You were born to carry forward the love he had, but not the silence that held it hostage. So speak, Capricorn. The words he couldn't say are now living through you. Part 7. Breaking the generational chain. Capricorn. There's a moment in every bloodline where one soul decides that enough is enough. Enough of the silence. Enough of the pain that never got named. Enough of the emotional inheritance passed down like a broken heirloom. And whether you realize it yet or not, you are that soul. You were born not just to endure, but to interrupt. You are the chapter in your family's story where the ending finally changes. Because here's the truth. Your father did his best with what he had. But what he had was limited. He was raised by his own set of rules. Taught to toughen up. Taught to avoid emotions. Taught that providing was more important than connecting. And so he passed on what he knew. Not because he wanted to wound you, but because he didn't know another way. But you do. You've seen what silence creates. You've felt what emotional distance costs. You've lived in the shadows of a man who loved you deeply but couldn't say it, show it, or hold you the way you needed. And now, Capricorn, it's your turn to change it. It starts small. Speaking when you want to hide. Feeling when you want to go numb. Saying I love you even if your voice shakes. Hugging your children, your partner, your inner child even when it feels unfamiliar. You are not dishonoring your father by doing what he couldn't. You are completing what he started. Because in every generation, healing moves a little further. And in you, Capricorn, it's finally breaking free. But let's be honest, it's not easy, is it? Breaking generational chains is some of the hardest soul work there is. You might feel guilt. You might feel anger. You might carry the pressure of being the one who's different. But you were never meant to blend in. You were meant to transform. And the chains you're breaking, they don't just free you. They free the past. They free the future. They free the children you haven't yet held or the child inside you still waiting for safety. Tonight, your father's voice doesn't resist your healing. It blesses it. He says, don't do it the way I did. Don't swallow your joy. Don't repeat my fears. Don't wear my silence like it's your name. Take my strength, but not my chains. Capricorn, you were never meant to carry all the pain forward. You were meant to carry the wisdom and leave the wounds behind. And you're doing it now. Right here. Right in this moment. You're untying knots that were never yours to hold. You're allowing love to speak louder than legacy. And that, Capricorn, is how the chain breaks. Life lesson, your healing heals the lineage. Capricorn, every family has patterns. Some beautiful, some brutal. But patterns only stay alive if we keep repeating them. You, with your strength, your awareness, your courage are the pivot point. You get to stop surviving and start thriving. You get to stop suppressing and start feeling. You get to stop protecting everyone else's emotions and finally care for your own. Because the most sacred thing you can do isn't to live like your father, but to live freer because of him. To take the best he gave, to bless the rest, and to say, with your life, the pain ends here. The silence ends here. The healing begins with me. You are not breaking the chain to shame your father. You're breaking it because he couldn't. And tonight, with everything that was left unsaid, his whispering, I'm proud of you. You're doing what I never could, and I love you more for it. Part 8. You were always enough. Capricorn, let's talk about the question you've asked in secret more times than you can count. The one that lives behind your achievements, behind your perfectionism, behind your drive to work harder, be better, do more. That question is, was I ever enough for him? You didn't ask it out loud, not even to yourself sometimes. But it showed up in your life. In the way you constantly second-guess your wins. In how you stay in relationships too long, just to prove your worth. In the pressure you put on yourself to succeed at all costs, because somewhere deep down, part of you still thinks you have something to prove. But tonight, we're going to lay that question to rest. Because here is the truth that your father never said, but desperately wanted you to know. You were always enough. From the moment you came into this world, before you could walk, before you could speak, before you ever did anything to earn love, you were enough. But he didn't know how to show that. Not because he didn't believe it, but because he had been taught that love had to be earned too, that you prove love through performance. That worth is tied to contribution. That silence is safer than vulnerability. So when you looked into his eyes and didn't see pride, when you waited for words that never came, when you mistook distance for disappointment, you created a story in your mind. If he didn't say it, it must not be true. But it was. He loved you. He admired you. He believed in you more than he ever believed in himself. He just didn't know how to express it because no one ever told him he was enough either. Capricorn, this is how cycles begin. Not with cruelty, not with absence, but with silence. And tonight, the silence is being broken. Because he's saying now, in the only way he can, you were never too much. You were never too little. You were never a disappointment. You were the best part of me even when I didn't know how to say it. So you can stop chasing proof. Stop trying to fill a hole that was never yours to begin with. You were always enough. And now it's time to start believing that, not just with your mind, but with your life. Life lesson, you were not meant to earn what was already yours. Capricorn, worth is not something you prove. It is something you recognize. For too long, you've tried to earn the love that should have been freely given. You've exhausted yourself in pursuit of validation from people who couldn't even validate themselves. But the time for that is over. Your father's silence was not a verdict. His absence was not a reflection of your value. His inability to speak was not a sign that you were unworthy. It was a reflection of the storms he never learned how to walk through. But you are not here to repeat that story. You are here to live like someone who knows they were loved. To create a life where love is no longer conditional. To say to yourself, every day, I am already enough. Because you are. Not because of what you do. Not because of how strong you are. Not because of what you've survived. But because you exist. And that, Capricorn, is more than enough. Part 9. The Blessing from Heaven. Capricorn. There are blessings that come with a warm embrace, a smile, or a hand resting on your shoulder. And then, there are blessings that arrive in silence. Through dreams. Through memories. Through words spoken not with a mouth, but with a soul. Tonight, you are receiving the second kind. Because even though your father may no longer be here, or may never have been fully present in the way you needed, his love is still moving, still reaching, still trying to get to you. And this is the moment when it finally does. You see, Capricorn, blessings don't always arrive wrapped in perfection. Sometimes, they are born through pain, carried through grief, delivered through the invisible thread that ties you to the ones who came before you. And your father has a blessing for you. He didn't know how to say it when his hands were still here. Maybe he didn't think he had the right. Maybe he believed his flaws disqualified him. Maybe he thought blessings had to come from those who did everything right. But he was wrong. Because blessings aren't about perfection. They're about intention. About the hope a soul carries for the one they love, even if that love was never expressed the way it should have been. And tonight, through every barrier time ever built, he speaks. He says, I bless your steps, that they may be guided even when the road is unclear. I bless your mind, that it may find peace even when the world around you is chaos. I bless your heart, that it may stay soft enough to love, but strong enough to protect itself. I bless your voice, that it may speak the truths I couldn't. I bless your future, that it may rise higher than anything I ever dreamed possible. And above all, I bless your spirit, that you may walk through life knowing you are never, ever alone. Capricorn, this blessing is not an apology. It is an offering, a passing of the torch. A sacred moment where everything he couldn't give you in life is now placed gently in your hands. Not out of guilt, but out of love. Because love doesn't die when people leave. Love, real love, becomes legacy. It becomes the way you rise, the way you forgive, the way you choose softness, even after growing up in hardness. The way you begin again, not because it's easy, but because it's time. And this blessing is your reminder that you are not cursed. You are not forgotten. You are not a mistake or an afterthought. You are the continuation of a story that's finally being healed. And your Father, in whatever way he can from where he is standing with you now. Not in the way you always hoped, but in the way you need most. Life lesson: some blessings are delivered through broken hands. Capricorn, we often expect blessings to arrive from people who have it all figured out. But the truth is, some of the most sacred blessings come from those who were never able to fully love themselves. Your father may have failed in many ways. He may have missed moments. He may have passed down pain he didn't even know how to name. But tonight, he passes down something different. Something whole. Something healing. Something holy. A blessing. Your task is not to judge the source. Your task is to receive the gift. To let the past be what it was. To take the good, release the harm, and move forward carrying only what serves you. Because you are not the weight of your father's silence. You are the light that rises from it. And this blessing, this whisper from heaven, is proof that no matter how the story began, you still get to choose how it ends. Part 10. What he wants for your future. Capricorn. Now that the silence has been broken, now that the message has found you, there's one final thing your father wants you to hear. And it's not about the past. Not about the wounds. Not even about the things he couldn't say. It's about your future. Because as much as he carried guilt, regret, or sorrow, he also carried hope. Hope that you would live in a way he couldn't. Hope that you would rise, not just in status or success, but in peace. Hope that you would stop surviving long enough to finally breathe. Capricorn, you've lived much of your life like you're still trying to earn rest. Still trying to justify joy. Still trying to feel like it's okay to stop carrying everything and just be. But your father's wish, his sacred, unspoken, aching wish, was that you'd finally experience freedom. Freedom from the pressure. Freedom from the pain. Freedom from believing that love only comes after performance. He wants your future to be built differently than his past. He says, I don't want you to carry the same chains. I don't want you to live in the shadows of fear. I don't want you to stay quiet just to keep others comfortable. I want you to speak your truth. I want you to laugh. I want you to feel joy without guilt. And I want you to love without having to earn it first. Capricorn, that life, the one he's describing, might sound far away. Maybe even impossible. You've built a fortress to survive. But now, it's time to build a home to live. You don't need to keep sacrificing joy for control. You don't need to keep proving your worth through effort. You don't need to keep holding your breath, waiting for the ground to give out. You can begin again. Not just in career. Not just in your goals. But in the way you relate to yourself. Your father didn't want you to follow in his footsteps. He wanted you to use the road he paved to walk somewhere he never got to go. You are the one who gets to break free. To forgive fully. To love openly. To live honestly. And your future, Capricorn. It doesn't have to be defined by what hurt you. It can be shaped by what healed you. You've already begun that process by receiving his message. Now finish it by living differently. That's the deepest wish he ever carried for you. Not success. Not pride. Not accomplishment. Peace. The kind he never knew how to find. The kind he always hoped you would. Life lesson: you are allowed to be free. Capricorn, for so long you've defined yourself by how much you could carry. By how much you could endure. By how well you could hold it all together. But life was never meant to be a weight on your shoulders. It was meant to be a journey for your soul. Your father may have lived burdened, but he doesn't want you to. You are allowed to laugh deeply. You are allowed to rest without guilt. You are allowed to love without fear. You are allowed to feel safe even when nothing's perfect. Because the greatest gift a parent can leave is not money, not advice, not even love in words. It's permission. Permission to live better, to feel more, to heal, to evolve, to fly. And tonight, Capricorn, that permission is yours. Conclusion: the final blessing and the sacred return to self. Capricorn, if you've made it this far, if you've walked through every word, every silence, every tear between the lines, then something sacred has already begun in you. Because this wasn't just a message from your father. It was a return to the truth, a return to the love that was always present, even when unspoken. A return to yourself, not the version shaped by burden, but the version shaped by awakening. You see, Capricorn, the wound was never the end of your story. It was the beginning of your wisdom. You were never meant to carry pain as proof of your strength. You were meant to transform it into purpose. The silence you grew up in, it taught you how to listen. The weight you inherited, it taught you how to hold space for others. The absence you felt, it gave you the power to be deeply present now. And all along, through it all, your father was watching. Not perfectly, not always the way you needed, but with a love that never left. Even in his flaws, even in his failures, even in the way he disappeared into himself, his love still found a way to reach you. And now you get to decide what to do with it. Not just carry it forward, but elevate it. Because the love you give now, the peace you create, the healing you embody, it becomes part of the legacy too. Capricorn, you are not here to repeat the old patterns. You are here to build something eternal. Not in stone or wealth, but in soul. The kind of legacy that says, I was the one who stopped the silence. I was the one who healed the lineage. I was the one who turned pain into peace. That is your sacred role. That is your cosmic assignment. That is your return to self. And now, let this be the final blessing, not from your father alone, but from the universe itself. May your days be steady. May your nights be restful. May the echoes of absence no longer haunt you. May love find you in quiet moments. May joy return to your bones. May your voice speak where others stayed silent. And may you walk into the future knowing you are never, ever alone. This was your father's final message. But it is only the beginning of your next chapter. Capricorn, if this message reached something deep in you, if you felt something shift, something soften, something awaken, then type in the comments right now. I carry the blessing. I carry the healing. I carry the love. Let it be seen. Let it be known. Let it be sealed. And share this with someone who also carries silence in their heart. Who needs to hear that love doesn't end when people leave. Who needs to believe again that healing is possible even if the words were never spoken. Because here, on Zodiac Secrets Revealed, we don't just decode astrology. We reveal the soul beneath it. And your soul, Capricorn, is ready to be free. Subscribe now, not for more content, but for more truth, more healing, more reminders that you were born for more than what broke you. Your story is still being written, and the pen is finally in your hands.